Get ready and strap in for the One Love HTX show, where all our conversations are always raw, unfiltered, and never staged. We can also be found on Instagram, all major streaming platforms, and westcliff.org. Check us out at onelovehtx.org for more info or ways to support the show. Now get ready to dive into conversations you won't always have in church with your hosts, Joshua Duffy and Daniel Salsi. Oh, we're there.
Oh, we're here. We're back by the grace of God. It's the way it always is. It's so good. We're thankful to be here. Thanks for joining us again on another wonderful podcast of the crew, One Love HTX, Westcliff, and Pilgrim Church, all in the same house, the Unibody, or something like that.
Whatever. This all sounds good. If they only knew
what happens before. Yeah. Go get your own podcast and figure out what we're going through.
Man, it's like the hard part is the easy part for us.
Yeah.
And then the easy part for other people is the hard part.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, I truly believe that and I'm not going to give it too much power because I'm just not going to go there. There's an entity against us.
Man.
But isn't that life, right?
That is life.
We all experience this kind of stuff, and you can either take it and smile and say, Jesus, take the wheel, or let it destroy you. And I refuse to let it destroy me.
Amen. Amen.
So, anyways, welcome back. We're going to have a good time today. The title of this podcast is The Santa Claus in Elf. I'll get into that in a second, but if you've ever seen the Elf movie, this is just going to be a great conversation.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. But before we get started, as usual, I told you we had some things in the works that we're trying to get through, and still planning the bigger event, trying to figure out where that's going. We don't have a full just plan for that, just kind of, again, letting God lead us into that. But there's a lot of conversation and a lot of talk, and we're excited.
Cool.
But one thing that we do have coming up that I'm really excited about, and I don't have full disclosure to say who, but I can say what. So one of our board members, Justin Flanagan, who is actually one of my right-hand dudes and brothers in Christ and friends and just everything. He's just a great guy. All of his family is friends with my family, and we do stuff with One Love HTX together.
And he is a who.
He is a who. Yeah.
Right on.
Who. So we are actually going April 1st to the Fort Bend County Juvenile Detention Center. I think this is our fourth time there. The first time we ever went, we were invited when the Whosoevers were in town. Brian Head Welch, Sonny Sandoval, Ryan Reese, all went over there and got to share their stories with these kids. And it's a brutal and incredible environment altogether wrapped up in there. You know, when you're seeing kids in there as young as 10 years old, all the way up to, teenage before they're considered adults, what they've experienced, what they're going through, and we just have the opportunity to pour into them due to a friend of ours that we made out there, and she's continued to ask Justin and I to come out. And so April 1st, we're bringing a very, very special person. The only thing I can say is it's my son-in-law, which is good enough in my book, but he's got quite the history to him and where he comes from and what he's done and what he's experienced and what God has done in his life. So we're going to go in there. Thank you to so many people who have donated. Even as small as it was, you think it was small, it's done so much. We had enough money in the funds to bring donuts, which is a really, really rare treat for these kids.
Nice.
So we're bringing donuts and kolaches to them while my son-in-law shares his story. And we're just pumped about that one.
Nice.
So April 1st, keep us in your prayers about that. We are looking so forward to that. So let's dive in today. So those of you who have seen the movie Elf, again, one of my favorite movies, there's you can grab so many one-liners from that movie that I just love. Anything come to your head right now?
So much.
So one of my favorite parts of the movie was in Central Park. I think, because that's New York, right? That's where that was.
Yeah.
Central Park, and Santa Claus's sleigh has no power. It's dying, and they're trying to get it going. And he had updated it with some new technology, right?
And then the horses who have, the police horses.
Oh, right.
The cavalry.
Yep, the cavalry.
Wasn't since Simon and Garfunkel concert.
Right.
Still being investigated.
Right.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. But Santa Claus updated his sleigh with some new technology, and the reason why he had to do that is because belief had died, a lot. So he had to put this new technology into the sleigh that got him around. Well, that wasn't working, and so they were kind of going back on we need the belief, but the belief wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So dying all around them. No one's believing in Santa Claus, and the sleigh just is not doing its thing, and it's like barely flying through the air, and they're crashing into trees and all kinds of stuff. And then people get a glimpse of Santa going through New York, and then all of a sudden, the girl, I can't remember her name, she starts talking to everyone and telling them, you just got to believe. And of course, the belief starts to come. Yeah. People start seeing it on TV, and kids and parents and everything. And then all of a sudden, boom, the power kicks in and just launches Santa Claus's sleigh to go do.
You brought me right back there.
Yeah, cool.
I'm in March right now, and I just want to jump to December.
Right, but that being one of my favorite parts of it, and it hits home because it's not because it's Santa Claus. I mean, there's so many other funny things in the movie, but that particular one, I was like, man, that's got such a spiritual content to it too, and just I was talking to a friend on the way over here too, and that's life. Belief in anything that we're doing changes the trajectory of everything in our life. And I remember I used to talk about hope a lot. And one of the things I remember about hope is I think hope is found, I can't remember how many hundreds of times in the Bible. And when it's used, I've always thought of the word hope as kind of a wishful thinking, like, oh, I hope that happens, right?
Yeah.
That's the way we say it a lot. But God and Jesus and everyone in the Bible, they've never used hope in that fashion. Hope was always the true definition of it. And when I looked it up one day, I was like, oh my gosh, that is biblical. Hope means to desire with expectancy. So you expect it to happen because it's been promised, because it's been said.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So hope is a huge, huge part of our lives, and God has left us that promise in so many different ways. But with that being said, it's just like thinking about all this in our world and where we are today. That's what I really wanted to talk to you about today and get that conversation going, because I think we're seeing, and we've talked about this a little before, but this loss of belief in God, and we're seeing so many other things take place, and we're seeing. The Bible says it, in the end days or in the last days, there will be those who say they believe in me, but they do not.
Right.
There will be those that come to try to trick you. There will be those that try to make their own, basically.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing a lot of that. And I could go on about different things that I'm seeing, but I think, if you look hard enough, or light enough, it's around us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that being said, it's like I told my wife today, what do you think it would look like? Just like that movie in Elf, in that part, what do you think it would look like if a family came together and really honed into belief? And again, we had one podcast that was, what does it mean to believe in God? Well, what does it do? That's a whole other factor. When a family begins to believe and they begin to pray together and they begin to understand the promises and the character of God, what does it look like when a village, when a city, when a country, when a world begins to believe? And what does it begin to look like when they don't believe? And I think, great picture, loss of power, right?
Yeah.
Is it that God doesn't have the power? Absolutely not. But if we're not tapping into it,
right,
we're tapping into something.
Right.
So that's kind of what I want to go to. Like, what are you seeing? What are you feeling, as a pastor?
Sure.
What do you see in the world going on right now and how that connects?
Well, you touched on something where you're like, hey, there's like a loss of belief. And, my first thought, like literally the first thing that hit me as you're talking is I don't know how often maybe we are taking social media
more seriously in the effects of social media. But I don't know. Maybe our listeners are already thinking this way, and I'm just basically about to waste 5 minutes of their life that they'll never get back. But I don't know that we are always considering. How about that? That is, while there are ways in which to leverage social media, let's use that as an example, for good, right? And we're doing it right now. But that involves just as much discernment as where you're going to go for a walk, let's say tonight in your city, wherever that is. There are places you don't go. There's certain places you're going to avoid. There's other places you're not going to go unless you have people with you. There's some places that certain times of day are fine, other times are not. And what I'm just trying to say is there is the prince of this world, and like the Greek rendering of it is like a governor, right?
Right.
Is Satan. And he has the same tools. He has no new weapons, but he does leverage them well. And I think one such example, when you think about belief, is this whole idea of social media, how it can be leveraged and weaponized to begin to suck that out of us. How does that happen? You begin to lose contentment. Why do you lose contentment? Because you're looking at everybody else's highlight reel. So everyone else's life seems better than yours. You're entirely connected, but you're not connected. There's 300 plus million people in the United States, give or take. And think about on your feed, how small the percentage really has to be to fill up your notifications with nothing but horrible updates of what's going on in the world. And how quickly you can start to wonder, is God in control? Is God moving? What's he up to? You know what I mean? So I feel like some of this comes down to what we're doing and the way that we're doing it, and then how we're engaging on something just like social media. I think that is having a profound effect on something like how we feel God is even operating in the world. And I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it totally does. And you're tapping into something there that was interesting when I'm thinking about just people in general. It's funny because we talk about the world and people, and what makes it so special is that we're all so different, right? We're all different. That the uniqueness of a person and the uniqueness of a community, and how even the church talks about. I mean, even the Bible talks about it. Is like the body is all different pieces, and we all have different strengths and different powers. But yet, like you said, on social media, we're tapping into that one thing that looks successful or beautiful or whatever it is, and that is making us believe that we all have to look like that.
Right.
And it's just tainting us.
Right.
It's damaging us.
Right.
And we can't go there. Like we have special qualities that we don't, just because, so and so on there has whatever the strongest body or facial structures or lack of whatever it is, like that's not what.
Right.
It's crazy, but yeah, that's strong. That's strong. What's happening there.
So I just think, I think one of the things that we have to take stock of is like, what do you think, like back to that movie, like what started taking a toll on people was just the cynical nature of how they understood. Now, granted, within the context of that movie, right? But within the context of how their needs were being met. And they started coming to the belief or the feeling or the thinking that the giver, so to speak, of those gifts was no longer the giver of those gifts.
Yeah.
And they could do it on their own. They could wield it on their own. And what you see in that movie, which I'm glad it's a cool movie to bring up, is just the idea that not only could they pull it off on their own, they kind of were. But what were they missing? They were missing any kind of like childlike joy, happiness, any kind of a winsome like dream anymore of, that there could be something better in life, that there was something more to life.
And it kind of showed that New York anger and everyone's just, on edge towards everyone. But when the hope and when the belief started coming in, people started helping and, loving on each other and smiling and shaking hands and giving hugs and really, it's the change. So
So I just think, like, as a pastor, what I really think is becoming critical is I think we're reaching an interesting point where we are really connected to love. I think people understand what love is about, but I don't know that. I think we're entering a season more now than ever where we have to start thinking about truth and grace. Jesus was grace and truth.
Right.
And I think a lot of times, and more when you ask me, like, okay, what's the world like? Where are we going? I really feel like those two things have to be combined and have to be hit in this beautiful tension that can only be resolved in Jesus. And I think so often we're trying to pick one or the other as the church because maybe we're trying to be stylistic or maybe we're trying to be, as we think, relevant, but we're losing reverence along the way. Or we're trying to be so reverent that we don't realize that we're actually becoming kind of like another degree of Pharisee. And then what's being given away then is grace. And now you've created a legalistic situation. So I think when I think of the world that we're entering into is how do you collide and slam into our world with grace and truth? And what does that look like in our current context? And I think, you look at like Jesus's Sermon on the Mount. So often we'll either read Matthew 5 or Matthew 6 or Matthew 7. But the truth is that is all one talk, 5, 6, and 7.
Right.
And in that talk is that collision of things that are so comforting and so tender. But then there's other things he says that are really hard to hear.
Right.
That to this day, I'm like, I really wish you wouldn't have said that. And I really can't resolve it in my own character because I kind of, in my flesh, I don't like what he said.
Right.
But he's God. And the only thing I can do then is resolve as he was trying to do in that moment, which was if you think you're killing it, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You think your righteousness is enough on your own, you're not. Let me knock you down about 1,000,000 pegs. Or if you think that you're too far gone and God will never save you or redeem you, you're wrong.
Right.
Quit worshiping at the idol of your own faults and failures.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
So I think, like, I don't know, man. I think when you say, like, okay, what's the condition of things and where are we headed? I think that is absolutely essential. And I don't know if the church, I almost feel like they're talking about, like, we're entering into another Renaissance. And we haven't seen this in 500 years. In the new Renaissance, people kind of pulled away from faith too because they were celebrating the creations of man. And I think we're kind of in that. I think the AI thing, artificial intelligence deal, we're in a whole new world that's the next 3 years are going to look radically different than right now, more than we've probably ever seen. So there's all these things that are kind of repeating in history.
Right. And it's funny. So as you're saying that too, I'm thinking, I love movies. I just absolutely love movies because there's so many stories in there. Whether they're trying to, thwart the goodness, there's always a message in there that you can find. Sometimes you're like, you're twisting this. So, anyways, and I found the good in it. So you even think about, like, one of my all-time favorites too is the Star Wars. I want to say trilogy because that's how old I am and we grew up with. Now it's the Star Wars. What is it? How do you say? Sextuplets? Or
man, I don't even know.
Sexologies?
I'm so lost at this point.
Yeah, maybe it's 7, 8. Who knows? Yeah. Anyways, it's a big story.
There's no Darth Vader anymore. It's just an old helmet that they'll just put in every now and again.
Right, but in that it's the dark side, right?
Yeah.
And then and what is it? And the Force, right?
Yeah.
So the dark side and the Force, or those of you that grew up when it was Darth Vader versus the Skywalkers, right?
Yeah,
so good and bad, good and evil. So I don't care how you want to look at it. That isn't everything, and that's belief. You're believing in something, and it's the power that we're going to tap into. We've talked about this over and over again. Like, this is God. This is God or Satan. And then some people say, I don't believe in Satan. I don't believe in God. Okay, well, you believe in something. Whether you say you do or not, you believe in something, and there is good and there is evil. Period. So, what is it that you're tapping into? And I love seeing that because I love those stories. Even in my faith where it is today, I still have those stories constantly where I've lost faith in a certain moment or something, because people ask all the time, how do you keep it? And I go, it's practice. It's flexing muscle. It's like going to the gym. And sometimes it's a new thing. Like you go to the gym too much and you do the same exercise over and over again, it becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
And you have to change it. You have to have your muscles experience something different, right? In order to get it moving again. And that's the way I look at faith and belief too. And I can tell a story where we went to right now. Won't get into huge details, but my wife needed a surgery, right? And we don't have traditional insurance like corporate world has. I'm a real estate agent, so we kind of got to handle this stuff by ourselves. And I was flipping out. I was in myself. My belief was in myself.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to understand how we're going to get this done. And again, loving my wife, she always brings me back down to earth when she does the whole question you heard me say this before. It's like, well, have you prayed about it? Or have you approached God about it? I'm like, no, actually I haven't.
Yeah.
So what did I approach? Okay, I don't want to say that I approached Satan on it because I didn't, but in a way I kind of did when I fell into myself. I'm trying to look to the world for the answer. Like, how do I fix this in myself? And to me, do you want to call it evil? No. Do you want to call it self? Sure. Do you want to call it the wrong choice? That's what it was. And so as we began to pray about it as a family, and that's what we talk about, like believing in this again, finding these places in our life, we began to pray about it, and things started to work their way out. It's like all of a sudden, one of our neighbors came and she was like, "Hey, that's crazy. You're going through that right now, and you're trying to find a doctor, and you can't get in till March 20th, and then it's still going to be a month after that." She goes, "Well, my husband's brother is the surgeon who does that particular surgery, and I'll go check with him." And boom, she checks with him. She goes, "He can see you tomorrow." And we're like, "What?"
Wow.
Just like that. And then, from the financial standpoint too, is a whole other animal. Like that should have destroyed us. And just praying through it and having hope, having belief, what is, I went back to not even the birds of the air, worry about what they're going to eat tomorrow. Right.
Yeah.
God's got them. And how much more does he love you? And I'm like, yeah, you're right, Father. This isn't a name it and claim it. I'm not trying to say that, but that is who I'm hanging out with.
Yeah.
The one that owns it all. So, Father, would you make a way? Would you help me to see it? Because I can't see it in myself. And if I try to, what can I do? I can go rob a bank.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that, so I'm going to follow something. I'm going to chase after something. But it all began to work its way out. Not necessarily, my choice. I would have said, "Hey, Lord, if you can just let me win 5 numbers of the lotto, that's enough."
Yeah, right.
I don't need all 6. I just need 5.
Well, let me just say, like my daughter the other day, she's 5, and this wasn't that long ago, and the topic of money came up, and she was like, "Well, you just need to go to the bank." Oh, there's the problem. I've been going to Walgreens, and that's why Daddy needs money. And then it's like, "Oh, you need food? You just go to the grocery store." Oh, it's a location issue.
Right.
I love it.
That's cool. But yeah, what happens when we start tapping into this belief? It's powerful.
I think what we miss too is like in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus doesn't say, this is what you pray. And then he gives us the Lord's Prayer. A little detail of that is he says, this is how you are to pray.
Right.
Not what, but how. And that's an outline.
Yeah.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In other words, you see something that's just horrific on TV and it's overwhelming and it's making your heart calloused. You can pray about that thing. Make your will done.
Yeah.
Jesus. But then he talks about like your daily bread. That's your daily bread.
Yeah.
And so often we maybe feel guilt-ridden or feel like it's not important enough compared to what's happening in some other part of the world or this tragedy that's happening or this issue. But that's not the nature of a good father. He wants to hear about your daily bread. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, help me here. And there's nothing wrong with asking with a simple childlike faith the way that a father would listen to a child, his own child. And if it's a no, or it's a maybe, or it's a wait, his timing and his purpose is perfect. But there's nothing wrong with bringing that to him.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing at all.
Yeah. Here's another one too. This one's cool. Bible studies. I have a Bible study that I go to. And I started this one probably 3 years ago with these guys. They've been meeting for 18 years.
Wow.
18 years in this place called Bagel Cafe in Katy, Texas, and really cool little place. Got this little back room area where we all sit. And when I started going there 3-4 years ago, there were probably at any given time, at least 9 or 10 people, always there. Yeah. And sometimes it grew to 12 or 15 maybe on a really, really good day, and then sometimes it was 5. Wow. But it's always been consistent. And 18 years, there's always enough there to meet and hang out. Well, something has happened over the course of 2020 that it's just started to exponentially grow and explode. And now we don't have enough chairs.
That's awesome.
In the back room. The guys are coming in and they've heard about it from word of mouth. There's no advertising. Kind of like the podcast, How do you hit 37 countries with no advertising besides our own social media? And believe me, I'm not that popular. But I think there's a power to that. And what happens in there too is there are so many needs that we hear about as a group. These guys are so good and they're so tapped in, but it's the power of belief of what we're all tapped into in that group. Yeah. We all have that common denominator. And we have the opportunity to help so many people that God has led us to. It's not us. It's him. It's what he is utilizing us for in his kingdom, and giving him the glory through it all. But it's so cool because I know when some of these needs come up, families that have lost everything, or Christmases of a single mother, or whatever it is. Yeah. They raise money. They get groups together and raise money on a bike run, and started off with, I think, 50 people, and it's grown to over 300 or something like that. Yeah. And they're raising money for human trafficking. I know there's people in there that say, but I don't have enough. But in faith, they have stepped out and they have, given, whether it be financially or their time, or whatever it is, and the impact that it's making. That's kind of when I think about that, when I was saying what happens when a family begins to believe, what happens when a village, when a city, when the country and the world begin to believe, how much change, what are we believing in? And what is it going to do? It's going to do something. If you're believing in the dark side, Darth Vader, it's going to get ugly. If you're believing in God, the Skywalkers, it's going to get beautiful.
Yeah. Well, philosophically, if we went up into the clouds, 60,000
Skywalkers feet. And Darth Vader is not philosophical. I thought that was pretty philosophical. Okay.
Hey, just go with love your enemy.
Yeah.
Forgive So to your point, there becomes an awful lot of interesting conversations that start happening worldwide on that level. The human value, human dignity, image bearers of God, regardless of where they're at, and regardless of their development. There's a lot of discussions that would start to transcend not just our country, but every country on the face of the earth. So, I think, so often the words of Jesus, they are beyond, they're not just countercultural. They don't fit into any box, and they disrupt kind of that whole social order. Yeah. Every way imaginable, Yeah. So it's a lot easier for societies and cultures and nations to adhere to the box that you check on Facebook and to an institution. But this is kind of the funny thing about it. How that works is there's kind of like the revolutionary, which is in this case would be Jesus, and then you have the refiner. So the revolutionary, he's got the sticks of dynamite and the axe, and he's at the foot of the mountain, and he's like, I'm going to flip the world upside down. And he's blowing stuff up and he's chopping stuff down. And then the refiner comes back and goes, okay, we kind of have a neighborhood, but we need some curbs, some sidewalks, some electricity,
right?
And let's make this let's put a flower bed over here so people want to actually live here, Yeah. And then there's the reruns. And the reruns are the net result of all of that. And they get so far removed from the refiner and the revolutionary that by the time the reruns take over, they tend to be or run the risk of just being in name only. So much so that it's possible that the revolutionary would no longer even recognize the work of the rerun. So what does that practically look like? It would mean like Jesus not being able to get a job at any church.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
We can't hire you to be a pastor here. Your
Right.
philosophies don't match.
Right.
And you can't say that. What's your name again? Jesus? Let's look again at your profile. I don't know if that's going to work here. And that's what I mean. Per your point, part of that piece of what would it look like is really taking what he said seriously and maybe pulling back a little bit on whatever happens to be the religious institutional party line of issues, because he makes things as messy as a bloodstained cross in a hurry.
Right.
And then you're having to rely on the Spirit. You can't rely on everything that man puts into place. But I think you'll always see that happen. The revolutionary to the refiner, Paul,
Right.
the disciples, these other letters that start building out what does it mean to follow Jesus. In our case, in our history, the early church fathers, like the first 300 years under extreme persecution. What does it mean to be a Christian? Okay, let's put it in something called the Apostles' Creed. Something in the 19. Let's figure this out. But now you get 2,000 years removed. You know, like there's nothing wrong with smoke and lights. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I dig all that, but like you can see how quickly, if left to our own devices, we run the risk of completely missing the point. Mm-hmm. And you can do that in a very traditional church. Mm-hmm. You can do that in a kind of traditional church. You can do that in a very forward-thinking, very cool, set up, culturally cool, relevant church. You can lose your way in any style to the point that maybe someone like the revolutionary would no longer even be accepted.
Right.
So part of what you're saying, what would it look like? It looks like fixing our eyes back on him.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm probably going to have to listen to that 3 or 4 times again on the podcast.
Don't ask me to repeat it or I'll have to.
That was deep. And wow, just thinking about that, again, we've talked about this over and over again, just kind of not bashing the church, because I am the church too, so I'm going to bash myself. I loved the music and the lights and the smoke and stuff.
Same
and,
here.
You know, and now I'm being just drawn different ways. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is funny because you think about, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about the Bible and what was going on during that time. And it was, synagogue and the Pharisees and, all the stuff that was going on there. And Jesus was out preaching by the water in a boat, that had stinky fish on it at one time, and people are gathering around. They're like, I'm tired of the Pharisees. I'm tired of all the gold and this is so cool, and it's kind of the same thing too.
Yeah.
Getting back to the roots, I think, again, it doesn't make it bad. It's just balanced. And where's the heart? Where's the heart in all of it?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I've heard that too before, going back to different, I guess, quote unquote religions. You can trace things back, but I still have to go back to, what was Jesus doing?
Yeah.
I don't care if you traced it back to then. That's fine. But what was Jesus doing? How was Jesus living his life? How did he teach his disciples? That is the number one picture we have in following, in believing, in honing into the power that we have access to, right at our feet, that changes everything, that doesn't create greed, that doesn't create,
correct,
the greed of power and everything else. It's a humbleness and something that's not natural in us. And like you said, it's becoming unrecognizable, and we can't find it right now. It's very difficult to look at something and go, is that right? Is that, because it's so hodgepodge now. It's so full of what man has created and how we destroy things.
Well, and that's why it's so important that people, the tension is, so God institutes the church. He puts that in place. That's his creation, not man. But it's so important for people to find that place that is true to Scripture. And I think that's why Scripture's put in people's hands. They can go, no, this don't line up.
Right.
I'm out. Hey, that's okay. Go find the place. You got to find that place. Because to your point too, and I think you and I are in complete agreement, otherwise you can be fed a version of this, and I think You go back 2,000 years ago, the really simplistic view of a fish, if we were to draw it, I'm a terrible artist. You know what I mean? Where it's like that little half-ate looking thing, right? Yeah. So back in the day,
ictus.
If they were killing our friends and family members for this, number one, no church is competing anymore for their brand. I can promise you that. Right? So there went the signage, there went the signs, there went the massive gatherings. That's going to go out, And back in the day, I would write half of that fish in the ground. And if you know, then you know.
Right.
You would complete it.
Right.
And then I would know.
Right.
Oh, we're the same.
Right.
We speak the same language. Nobody knows that,
Right.
in the Roman Empire, but we're there.
But if I drew a figure 8,
then I knew this guy's just
the enemy.
It's the beginning of Einstein, maybe. I don't know. But I mean, that's all I'm saying is like, you just take even that, you get to the branding, you get to all of the focus that people have now.
Yeah.
It's a lot further away from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's important you find that home, you find that place that's faithful. And then with Christians who are not perfect, it's not going to happen, but faithful to Scripture, and they're out there, but they may not look like you think they're going to look, and it may not be what you think. That's going to be the thing, and I think moving more in our future. Yeah.
So kind of just to land this whole ship, this is a great conversation. There's so much that can come out of it when I think about, and that's another podcast that I have in mind, is just thinking about the way we act and live, and what we're showing other people. I always use the Christianese term, like the world doesn't know what we've been experiencing. I mean, so when we start talking Christianese to people, it starts to turn them off, and just being a loving person, just sowing seeds that way. That's a Christianese term too, but you know what I'm saying? It's like just loving people, but just thinking of landing this. One of the greatest things I think we can do, if you think about that as listeners, is, I think the Hussos connect to so many people in what we do in One Love and everything, because we're just ourselves. We're not trying to be something. We're in love with Jesus. We're in love with God. We want to learn more. We want to share it, but a lot of times we share it through, as Jesus did, meeting needs, meeting people where they are, loving them from where they are. Not telling them everything that they're doing wrong, because quite honestly, most of us already know it. We feel it in our lives, but do you still love me for who I am? Jesus does. So I'm called to do that same thing too. And maybe it's starting a group, like kind of like I was talking about the Bagel Boys started, now it's busting at the seams because it's such a safe place. The safe environment. Most of these guys still go to church. They have their church homes. But they love this place because it is so safe. It's so easy to talk and ask questions without being looked down upon. And I think that's huge. So I don't know. Maybe you're having that. Maybe you feel alone right now in your town or your city or whatever it is. And look for others like you. Start something in your house. And just start bringing people in conversation about the Bible, read something together, and talk about it and grow that way. Still have your church home. That's great. But you know what I'm saying? It's just like,
well, and I'll even add, like, if you're in a rough season right now, like, don't underestimate, like Buddy the Elf, how God will use your story.
Yeah. Your story is huge.
Brought it back.
Oh my gosh, Buddy the Elf.
Where's the sound effect?
Yeah. I don't know what it would do. But I think about too, like, again, if you're in Houston, Pilgrim's a fantastic church, but you might go, well, I don't want to go on Sunday, or Sunday's my sleep-in day. Okay, well, cool. Well, guess what? There's a really cool group of guys and women that meet on different days during the week at a coffee shop and someplace else it's so legit. And just being able to just sit there and talk with other people, and again, I love it. Don't think you have to get dressed up. I mean, I grew up in that way. Like, you got to put on your Sunday best. Well, guess what? This Husso jacket is my best. I love this thing.
It's quality.
It's not cheap either. So, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, whatever, it's like, come as you are. That's truly what it is. Put a hat on, come out and, just find a place to get connected.
Right on.
Because through connection comes hope, comes belief. That's how you grow those seeds. That's how you bring that. And the world needs more of that. The world needs more people just diving into the good side, There's enough bad out there. There's enough bad to dabble in, and it's destroying us. So, anyways, Buddy the Elf.
You should pray us out of here on that note.
All right. Thanks again for joining us. All right. So here we go. Father, we thank you so much just for the opportunity to come together, laugh, share the things that you're putting on our heart. And Father, ultimately, just sharing the good news of who you are. Father, I just pray that, again, anyone who's in earshot and struggling with trying to figure out who you are, trying to figure out what belief in you means, trying to figure out, if they even believe. Father, I pray that you would make yourself known. I think Ryan Reese prayed that so well. I don't care where you are. God, that's the way he feels. Whether you have had experience with him, have walked away, not sure anymore, or just don't flat out believe, give a chance. That's who you are, Father. So I pray in the name of Jesus that you would show yourself, reveal yourself, whether it be through a person or even a movie or a song that would prompt us to come and ask you, show me who you are, show me that you exist. I want to believe. Grow our belief, grow our faith, grow our unbelief to belief, Lord. We love you and we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Love you guys.
Yeah, till next time.